So what is ranked choice voting? In most parts of the United States, voters select a single candidate for each position on their ballot, and the candidate with the most votes wins. This is known as single-choice winner-take-all, which can sometimes result in the election of a candidate who earned only a small percentage of the vote, even when the majority of voters supported other candidates. But that's not the only way of electing our leaders. Ranked choice voting is another voting method which allows voters to rank their candidates in order of preference. In a ranked choice voting election, a candidate needs to earn more than half of the votes to win. All first choices are counted, and if a candidate has a majority, then they win, just like any other election. If not, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who picked that candidate as number one will have their votes count for their next choice. This process continues until a candidate earns a majority and is declared the winner. Let's look at an example. Here, you select orange as your first choice candidate, yellow as your second, pink as your third, and green as your final choice. The first choices are counted. Yellow earned 35%, orange 21%, pink earned 28%, and green earned 16% of the vote. Because nobody won more than 50%, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who picked him as their first choice have their ballots count for their second choice. This continues until a candidate receives more than half of the votes, or 50% plus 1. So what are some of the benefits of ranked choice voting? Ranked choice voting provides more choices, allowing more than two candidates to compete without fear of splitting the vote among like-minded individuals. Sometimes voters feel pressured to vote for the lesser of two evils. Ranked choice voting allows people to vote for their favorite candidate, not just against the candidates they dislike. With ranked choice voting, we see more positive campaigns and less negative advertising. Candidates are encouraged to reach out to as many voters as possible, including those supporting their opponents. They can build a winning coalition with like-minded candidates to earn voters' second and third choices. It's time to fix our democracy and make our elections work better for everybody. We can do that with ranked choice voting. Visit www.fairvote.org to find out how you can get involved.
Good afternoon. My name is Ben Murphy, and I will be your host for today's Aircast featuring Liz White from UpVote, Virginia. As you just saw, we played a quick introductory video on ranked choice voting, and I want to kind of start our Aircast off today by welcoming Liz White. Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So on the topic of whether it's good for democracy, I think the thing I want to start off here, and this will be directed initially at you, Liz, and then we'll open the floor for everybody to participate. But as you mentioned, or one of your key issues I know is government transparency. So the question is, how do you think public trust in government has changed over time?
I mean, I think that any polling information you look at, and just anecdotally and kind of, what we all feel in our daily lives, I think public trust in I think some people have lost faith in the system, right? They think that elections are rigged. They think that people are cheating. Some people look at things like gerrymandering and know that there are people cheating, because gerrymandering really is just legalized cheating. And I think that regardless of what part of the process you question, I think we all look at current politics and know that something's broken. So some people distrust pieces of the system, and I think some people just distrust that we're going to get any good result out of government because there's so much polarization, there's so much gridlock, there's no incentive for conversation and compromise. And so even people who don't necessarily think there's anything untoward going on in elections, I think still probably don't necessarily trust government to get things done to improve their lives.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, obviously, polarization is an issue that we all face. That's kind of one of the things we're trying to, combat here is provide a platform to have, kind of fair and moderated discourse between, people of all kinds of backgrounds, a lot of diversity. So I guess on the topic of ranked choice voting I'm sorry. Before we go to that, I want to ask our panelists, what are your guys' perspectives on how trust in government has changed over time. Maybe start with Joe.
Um, I'll say obviously my um experience with the government and other people's view of it isn't very long. But what I do know of it is just is a world where people have always seemed very cynical, you know, from as early as I can remember, there was a tone about politics, a tone about the government of it's not gonna get it's not gonna work the way we want it to, kind of regardless of if we vote or kind of or not. And it 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 felt easy in that feeling, and I feel like that's what got me into this work.
Yeah, it seems like apathy is obviously a problem for nearly half the country, but particularly college age students, I think. I think that's something we've certainly found is that when you talk to our peers, generally you hear from people that they feel like, oh, well, my vote doesn't really matter. So why am I, participating in the political process? So Frida, what are your thoughts on the question of trust in government?
I just wanted to kind of echo what our featured guest, Miss Liz White, was saying. And those also just kind of add that I think polarization today also kind of attributes to that. There's
Certainly.
different ideas and opinions, and that's always been a norm. But I think just the extreme polarization kind of adds in distrust in government and then our elected officials and almost every aspect of like the system itself. And then if there's maybe new ideals of like voting reform, such as ranked choice voting, that's still kind of, people are still wary of that. So it's just kind of a lot of key things that kind of are emphasizing kind of like the distrust with government. And even like Ben, that you were saying, just the younger generation, maybe sometimes the word trust doesn't exactly apply, but it's just also kind of interest that kind of stemmed from lack of trust from, their parents' generation or things like that.
Yeah, so I think that's a good segue into the ranked choice voting question. So Liz, this is directed at you initially. Do you think ranked choice voting may aid in increasing public trust towards government?
I do. I think to Joe's point earlier, we have to fight against the impulse to be cynical and jaded and apathetic. And some of the, in kind of, I like my personal daily struggle with that. You read the news and it's very, very easy to go, well, these districts aren't competitive or nobody showed up for this primary and these people are terrible and what is happening? I've got to do something. And there are some concrete foundational fixes that can happen. And I find that is how I fight cynicism and try to preserve my optimism. And I am just in awe of we have a bunch of volunteers who step up to work on this, who don't get paid to do it, who aren't on staff. And I'm just in awe that they fight through that apathy and work on concrete solutions, which I know is not really your question. I do think that ranked choice voting certainly is not a cure-all, but it is a achievable, concrete, simple step in the right direction. Ranked choice voting incentivizes conversation and nuance in campaigns, and I don't know that much else does right now, especially when you think about districts that are not, districts, states, whatever, that are not competitive. So they're very, very red or they're very, very blue. Ranked choice voting, especially if you use it in a primary, then you kind of leave room for different flavors, different shades of red and blue. So even if you think about a bunch of people who are going to go in and vote for a person with a certain letter next to their name, that primary is now given them the opportunity to see the full range of possibilities for that letter. And it forces candidates to talk to people beyond their very narrow base. It forces them to go have real conversations. It disincentivizes negative campaigning. So it's not enough just to say, vote for me because that guy's terrible. You have to say, that guy is not as good as I am, and let me tell you why. Because what you don't want to do is alienate that guy's voters. You want them to put you second. If you can't get them completely, you want them to rank you, in their second or third preference, because you're going to need those votes. So mudslinging, negative campaigning doesn't help you. In fact, I mean, if we look at Alaska, part of the reason Sarah Palin lost in the special election a couple months ago is because of the negative campaigning that she and the other Republican in the race did. And it kind of allowed the Democrat Mary Peltola to have her positive issues-based campaign and kind of sail through all the noise and be a viable second choice for a lot of voters, even ones who don't traditionally vote for the person with the D next to their name. So I think it fights polarization because it forces conversation to go beyond 280 characters. And even beyond Twitter, even beyond social media, I think that's how politicians talk anymore. How do you feel about education? Well, it's this. How do these three talking points, and they're consistent, they're prescribed, they're shallow for the most part. And in a primary, you're all going to have the same talking points. So now tell me why I should pick you instead of candidate B or C. So I think conversation and a broader coalition is vital. So many primaries are won because somebody focuses on a narrow base, or just people who look like them, think like them, live near them, and you don't have to talk to anybody else. Building this consensus gets you better candidates, gets you better government. It also makes your job easier if you're the elected official. It makes you better at your job. And if you manage to win with that coalition, you've already got the coalition when it's your turn to govern, and you know what your constituents need, and you've heard from a lot of different kinds of people. And I think that the more we can get out of our silos, the more we can fight against the extreme and deep and yet almost entirely superficial polarization.
I think there's quite a lot of valuable nuggets within that statement. So I have a follow-up question based on that, but before that, let's just hear a little bit from maybe Frida. You can start here. So what is your kind of perspective on ranked choice voting's effect on the public's interest in government?
Again, I'd like to echo what Liz said. So I do agree with it. But I think because it's or with what Liz was saying, but because it's still kind of, still relatively new to American politics and governance, I think it may be a while for the public to kind of be on board. I think also just because of the complexities with it, I think almost, there's and how there's the idea that it may benefit like some sort of candidates over the other. I think people kind of need to recognize and really acknowledge and be informed of what ranked choice voting is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably almost every part of the political process. More informed voters is obviously going to be the goal here. So, Joe, what are your thoughts?
What I absolutely love the idea of a system of voting that inclines us towards talking about the issues, that that the fact that in Alaska, in this recent special election, and then Mary Peltola was just elected again, right? I think
looks like it. We won't know until they count the second ballot, but yeah.
But yeah, it looks like she'll be reelected. So that's pretty big for the Democrats winning Alaska. That's not something they've done in a while. But also just the people of Alaska having a different option, and someone being able to run a successful campaign and not be buried in the mudslinging where, you know, we've seen it's very easy for candidates who want to focus on the issues to get otherwise buried by candidates who get a lot of news coverage because they do all that mudslinging. And I because it can be it can be harder for for the candidate focused on the issues because they're not drawing as much media attention, and that is bad because it is true for politicians. Any media is good media.
I think Herschel Walker is a fantastic example of that down in Georgia, as a matter of fact. Yeah, so I guess this is the question that kind of jumping off of what everybody else has said. So do we expect ranked choice voting to benefit, like in the long run at least, more moderate candidates? Do we expect ranked choice voting to be a kind of significant player in the depolarization of our political spectrum? What are your thoughts on that, Liz?
So I think you can't promise that ranked choice voting is going to elect more moderates. What you can, I think, safely assume is that ranked choice voting is going to elect candidates able to build a consensus in their district. You know, whether that's they're the mayor of a small town, or they're a city council member in a big city, or they're president of the United States, whatever it is, you have to find someone that the majority, truly over 50% of voters are okay with. Maybe they're not their first choice, but they support them and they're okay with this choice. They're happy enough. So often that is a moderate candidate, especially if they're in comparison to someone who's pretty far to the right or left of them. Because I think, you know, again, if you look at any poll, voters en masse in the United States are far more moderate than the flanks of either party. They're more moderate than the elected officials that you see. So I think you do see more moderation, but like, I think Elizabeth Warren's a good example. Her policies would not be classified as moderate, but if she can talk to enough people and build a coalition and they just like her and trust her, she could win. I mean, so she's from Massachusetts, which is, you know, more blue, like certainly a blue state. But I think that the actual place on the political spectrum is going to be less important to voters than how much they feel that person represents them, cares about them, is going to fight for what they need. Again, look at Alaska, look at Mary Peltola. This red state didn't get swayed by the D after Mary Peltola's name. They liked what she had to say about fisheries in Alaska. And she was allowed to be, I mean, she's a pretty moderate Democrat, but she's still a Democrat in Alaska. And if you follow her on Twitter, it's truly mostly fishery talk. But she was local and she was speaking directly to what Alaskan voters care about. And she truly was able to carve that path, regardless of her political affiliation. So I think you will see, again, I think it is a moderate, you'll get more moderates. It is I cannot come up with that word.
A moderating system.
Moderating. Thank you. I was like, moderizing is not correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. A moderating influence. I think you'll see less of a chasm between the right and the left.
I mean, I think obviously that's encouraging. Really, I mean, we should be trying to pursue, you know, any kind of system that works to help with our polarization. And, you know, part of that is, you know, education. I mean, we just need to have people that are actually, you know, interested in really this country's future, but particularly their own, and, you know, taking the steps to, you know, learn about their local or state level representatives as well as the federal level. So what I'm, I guess, particularly curious about, in your experience with talking with voters or just constituents, what is the general perception towards ranked choice voting? Are people aware of what it is? If they are they generally supportive? Are they generally against it? Or maybe are they proposing something entirely separate?
So it depends on where, like we talk to voters all over Virginia, and it very much depends. I mean, in our again, we're pretty new on this issue, but my limited experience, if you go to somewhere like Arlington, where it tends to be a very well-educated, civically engaged community, most voters I talked to had heard of ranked choice voting, knew about what it was. What they didn't know is that their county board is voting tomorrow on whether to adopt RCV for their county board primaries. They would be the first locality in Virginia to do so. So, right, it's so exciting and really, really huge. And that's what they didn't know. So they know the broader political stuff, right?
Yeah.
We're all, even if we think we're really plugged in, maybe it's on the federal level or maybe it's
Right.
only the statewide level. And to your point, I think the more granular and local you can be engaged, the more difference you can make. But I live in Chesterfield, right out of Richmond, which is a huge and really varied county. I mean, it's just a big, big mess. And I talked to voters at a couple different locations during early voting and on election day. Most people knew nothing about ranked choice voting. A couple people had heard some talking points from some group or the other and said, oh no, I hate it. Okay.
Right.
If I could get them to talk to me, we would usually find out pretty quickly that reaction was based in misinformation. But most people were kind of clean slates, which was really interesting. And I, gave them a really fast elevator pitch as they were leaving their polling place. But if you just say, you go in and, think about it as a crowded primary, you go in and instead of just getting to vote for one person, you get to rank 1, 2, 3, 4. And that way, if your favorite isn't everybody else's favorite, your vote still counts. You still get some say. And no one ends up winning with 25% of the vote when 75% of voters wanted someone else. And just that, which really focuses on the voter experience and not like the complicated back end. Because to your point, Frida, like it is confusing and complex, but really only on the back end. When you talk about like the tabulation, voters going in and just ranking, we do that all the time. My 4-year-old can tell you her top 4 favorite anything. Ask her about her Starburst flavors. They're all out of whack, but she knows them. So I think we're trying very, very hard to get in front of as many voters as possible because, again, Frida, to your point, voter education is the key. The biggest talking point against RCV is that it's confusing, but as soon as people know about it, they go, oh. And exit polls from people who've used it show, high 70s and up. The voters who've used RCV like it, understood it, want to use it again. 85% of Alaskans in that special election said, yeah, it was simple. But that's also because 95% of them said, yes, I received information about ranked choice voting before this election. So voter education is the key. But as much as we can get up ahead of misinformation, I think we have a real shot in Virginia of having an honest conversation about the merits of this policy. And we're looking at it in not only, for statewide solutions, but also for localities to adopt, because Virginia has passed a bill in 2020 that allows localities to adopt ranked choice voting to elect their board of supervisors or city council. So we're kind of trying to empower each locality to look at the policy and figure out if it is right for their locality. And the more we can get in there early and talk to voters before they've made up their mind with whatever the talking point, whatever the tweet is telling them, the more nuanced conversation we can have, the more, the better, the more we can move forward.
Yeah, it seems, at least in my experience, is when you talk to people, people are much much more reasonable in person than they are, say, online, for instance. But to go to our students here, so I'm curious, in your guys' or in your experience, whether that be maybe with your family or your friends or whatever, do you think that those kind of people in your life have an idea of what ranked choice voting is, even in the first place? What are your thoughts on that? Either of you can start.
I can't say that I know if they would if they know. Uh, I think they would, like you say, would have heard of it or would know some broad strokes potentially, but they wouldn't. They would probably understand that there's some complexity to it and that they don't understand it fully.
Right.
They might not understand how easy it is for the voter, go in and just rank it. I think that part is often kind of forgotten about in talking about ranked choice voting, is that for the voter, actually, yes, it is particularly easy. You're just making a list. Otherwise, it's everything else that is a little bit more complex.
What about you,
So.
Frida?
Yeah, so in my current fellowship with my cohort, most, if not all, of those in my cohort, they're very interested in, American politics or American governance and democracy. So I can almost guarantee that they know what ranked choice voting is. To the extent I'm not too sure, but I know they all voted, so they keep up to date with things like this. More of my like immediate friends and family, I'm not too sure if they would understand it, even like the most simplest terms. Maybe, but that's always just a learning thing in life, just to get informed. And I don't think that they would mind kind of taking their part to be more of an informed voter.
Right.
I think I'd be pretty keen on it from what, like, because Liz, you were saying, a lot of people, they were just a clean slate, didn't understand it. You spoke with them, told them, they're like, oh, okay, understand the simple task on their part. So I feel like I could for those in my life close to me.
Yeah,
I think the other, sorry, Ben. I was
No,
gonna say
you're good.
The other name for ranked choice voting is instant runoff voting. And I think that helps clarify what it does and how it functions for people. I mean, especially now, like, let's look at Georgia. Everyone's going to most likely have to come back to the polls on a different day. The campaigns are going to have to keep going and raise money and text you every 5 minutes for $5. And the state's going to have to pay for that. When instead, if everyone had just said who their second choice was, you drop that third party candidate and reallocate his second place votes, someone's going to get over 50% because now you're down to 2 candidates and you're done. It's an instant runoff. That second ballot substitutes for an in-person runoff. And in fact, states like Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi and like kind of that like South Carolina on like deep South belt, they all do these in-person runoffs. And they also all use ranked choice voting for their military and overseas voters because they do not have time to get those people a new ballot and get it back in time. So they get to say who their second and third and however many choices are. So they get to apply that second choice to the in-person runoff. So they already do it. But I think that's helpful because I have some folks who get confused and they're like, oh, so if you pick, if your candidate is doing well, you basically get your vote counted several times, and you don't. Each ballot is a new vote count. So I think that's helpful for people to understand.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like this is another one of those issues that kind of comes down to education. I think the vast majority of people are very likely to support ranked choice voting. They just need to be aware of what it actually is. And ironically enough, I think like the people who are most likely to be actually opposed to ranked choice voting are probably the ones who are also quite educated on it and alternatives. So I think it really comes down to, as you've been doing, I think obviously is, educating people on what it is, why it's beneficial. And I think, like you said, a lot of the time they find that they actually are in favor of it. So to kind of close out our conversation here a little bit, I wanted to grab a question from our YouTube audience. So Gabriel, you here asked, I think a two-part question. So the first one is, do you think that ranked choice voting is more prominently discussed in the US compared to other voting systems? And then the other part of the question is, how do other systems like party list and hybrid systems like parallel voting stack up to ranked choice voting in your opinion?
Sure. I do think ranked choice voting is the most prominent alternative voting system, right? There's others out there for sure. There's a couple localities who've adopted something like approval voting. But ranked choice voting, I think, has the most usage, right? There's a few states that use it. There's I think we're up to 60, probably after election day, 60 localities that use it. And it, again, in different ways, there's different applications. But yeah, I would certainly say it's a fair assessment that RCV is the most prominent and most discussed alternative. I am not even familiar with some of the ones you just said, but I know something like approval voting or star voting, where, you know, approval voting is the other one that is actually implemented in a couple places. And in that voting system, you'd get to go in and basically say, I would be fine with any of these 4 people. So it's like ranked choice voting, except that no vote is weighted over anything else. So the downfall of approval voting, it's still, I think it's probably still better than the plurality first past the post voting that we have right now. The downfall with approval voting is that, you know, let's go back to the 2020 election and say, you know, say Marianne Williamson is your person in that primary and you love her and she speaks to your soul, but you'd be okay with, I don't know, 3 others. But by putting 4 people, you actually have diluted your vote for this person that you love.
Right.
Whereas with ranked choice voting, you put her 1, you rank the others. As long as she stays in the race, she and she alone still have your vote, has your vote. It's an easier system to game because you can go in and bullet vote. Again, if Marianne Williamson's your girl and that's who you want above other people, it does benefit you to bullet vote, which means only put your first choice. Whereas with ranked choice voting, you can bullet vote. No one's making you fill out any rankings. You can just go in and vote for 1 like you do now. But then if Marianne Williamson hypothetically gets eliminated from the second ballot, then you don't have a vote anymore. Whereas if you had a second, third, fourth that you'd be okay with, you'd still get a say in subsequent ballots.
Right.
So again, I think there's probably, there are a lot of ways to do it better. Ranked choice voting has the best track record at this point. So that's what we've chosen to focus on. But there's a lot of interesting solutions because, again, there's so many problems with how it works now. And the more people step up and run for office, which is a great thing to have, you know, great problem to have, our current system isn't built to support that. People get punished for splitting the vote. People get punished for, you know, being one of 2 candidates in the same demographic, because then they split the vote and they're a spoiler, and voters have to be pundits and really kind of detangle who they think can win. Whereas something like ranked choice voting, all of that's eliminated.
Right. Okay, well, we're coming up on our time here, so I would like to thank the Mason students for participating. Do you guys have any final thoughts?
I think I'd just like to say that it seems like ranked choice voting is a system that offers a system where the politicians are more inclined to care about the issues and what voters think of the issues, and I don't see how that could be negative, like a negative thing for the voters. You know, maybe it doesn't benefit the politicians, but I'm not really thinking about them, I guess.
Any thoughts from you, Frida?
I just wanted to thank you, Liz, for joining us today as our guest. I feel like personally, like I knew what I thought was like enough about ranked choice voting, but it was very informative. I learned a few things too. So I just want to thank you for being here as our guest.
It was
Yeah,
my
I
pleasure.
thought you brought up some fantastic points, Liz. So thank you for joining us today, Liz. Do you have any final thoughts?
Just if you're interested in ranked choice voting, if you want to see it implemented in Virginia, it's the only place I have any jurisdiction, but you can go to our website. It's upvoteva.org. You can sign up to volunteer. You can sign up to reach out to your local officials and tell them that it's something you want to see implemented at home. There's lots of ways to get involved, and I think we're really building up some momentum to continue this conversation across the state.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate having you on. And you're free to go at this point. So thank
All
you.
right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Okay, so for the next portion of our Aircast, we will be talking about some of the news of the week. We have produced a short video, which we will be playing now.
You're asking the same question, of course, I ask myself every day, and everyone is asking right now. We are getting results on a daily basis, but they are piecemeal, right? And so there may be 15 or 20,000 released tonight from Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is, and maybe a similar number from Washoe County, which is where Reno is. But we are not going to have a real handle on the Senate race probably until at least Saturday, as I mentioned, when the deadline is at 5 o'clock. But people can still cure their ballots, that is, fix their mail ballots up until a couple days later.
Different things that happened in less than 2 years since he's been in office, and I'm not going to let them continue to destroy Georgia or destroy this country. So I'm going to keep fighting. Right now, we got less than a month, and I can put up with a month, because right now this seat is a lot bigger than Herschel Walker. And I know they're going to throw more at me, even the kitchen sink, but I can catch it. I'm going to catch it and keep moving forward.
It's the three states that I wanted to talk about were Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan was reelected, made this a key issue in her race. And then Tony Evers in Wisconsin was reelected, and he again also was very focused on abortion, particularly with the prospect of GOP, with a very strong GOP state legislature there. And then Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, a new governor-elect there in Pennsylvania, and he very much was focused on reproductive rights.
And in the day's non-election news, Russia's military announced that its forces are withdrawing from a key city in southern Ukraine, a major new blow to its war effort. Moscow said it is retreating from Kherson on the west bank of the Dnieper River as Ukrainian forces advance in the area. Russian state TV broadcast the decision in a conversation between its top general in Ukraine and the defense minister. A rare November hurricane has weakened tonight after smashing into Florida's Atlantic coast. Nicole's storm surge drove big waves onshore early today and carried away oceanfront homes north of Vero Beach. From there, it moved inland with flooding rain. The storm's remnants will push through Georgia and the Carolinas and reach New England by Saturday.
Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to talk about today was obviously big news, is the elections that have occurred, ones that have finished, some are still in progress. So I just wanted to quickly get your thoughts. Was there anything that surprised either of you? Either of you, feel free to start.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was expecting a bigger win for the GOP in the House of Representatives. I was expecting it to be rather thorough, and it seems like right now the margin could be very thin, or almost they might not take it. Like, it could be just by like one representative.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are expecting a bigger kind of red wave, as they said, than what actually occurred.
So,
Yeah, I didn't really expect like how close it was. And that's kind of funny that you brought out about a red wave, because it turned out more like, and I saw this on a tweet, it's more of like a red puddle instead of a red.
I saw that too, yeah.
That was pretty funny. There were some people that I'm glad won, and others that I'm kind of sad that didn't, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, I just thought, I mean, the one that kind of surprised me, I think, was actually the Abigail Spanberger, Yesli Vega race. It was closer than I thought, actually. It was actually quite close.
You know, I was also a little surprised that Josh Shapiro won in Pennsylvania, and Fetterman. They both.
I mean, yeah.
The fact that both of them won, to me, was surprising.
Yeah, I mean, also I'm like following a like a specific race in Colorado in the 8th district. That one I completely predicted the Republican would win, and she did not. She actually conceded before even the vote count was over. So another surprise.
Wow.
I think it's surprised, it seems like almost everybody. But so, okay, I think the second thing that we want to talk about, and this will be the last thing we talk about, is really what's been going on with Twitter. As well, at least in my view, Twitter is a pretty important part of political discourse. I think it's can be not uniquely, but it's one of the very heavy factors of why, for instance, Trump was elected, was his usage of social media. And Trump himself revolutionized the usage of social media, and Twitter has played a major role in that. So with the acquisition by Elon Musk and some of the changes and such going forward, do you guys have any hot takes on Twitter, what it will be like in the future?
I think it's a little tragic. I think that, you know, whatever stunts he's pulling right now with it are just going to negatively affect the company. I don't know how. It seems like a lot of people are taking it less seriously. It seems like politicians are pushing themselves away from it, kind of en masse. So I don't know how long Twitter is, but you're right, and there's going to be a need for something like it to come soon.
What about you, Frida?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree with you, Ben, that it is very important for political discourse and some civic engagement. And I think it's kind of dangerous what Elon Musk is doing, especially just focusing on the verification. You have to pay or subscribe to Twitter Blue, and then you get the verification thing, and people are impersonating. And if you aren't, or if your account isn't very obvious, or it doesn't state that it's a parody, then you'll get banned from Twitter. But there's just a lot of people kind of finding loopholes or some way around it to have a parody account with the blue check. And it's little things like that, which I think is kind of dangerous. There's already fake news, and this is definitely kind of like mirroring that what it is. And I personally love Twitter. I'm a Twitter user. But I'm not really into what Elon Musk is doing right now. I don't think he even knows what he's doing either. So I guess we'll just see what it is. But it is tragic, like Joe said.
Yeah, so I think just to close out, I'll give my perspective. I actually completely disagree. I actually think I'm in the minority. I think like what Musk's potential vision could be very good. Like if it's executed properly, I think Twitter operates effectively as a virtual town square, and it should be treated as such. I think if the blue check mark, if it's done in such a way that you can buy it, but you have to verify like who you are, for instance, it's kind of genius. Like it necessarily improves discourse because no longer are you able to hide behind a veil of like anonymity. So like if to get the blue check mark, you have to verify your account. What?
But you're allowed to have an account on Twitter without having a blue check mark.
Yeah, you can. And so nothing changes there. But what I'm saying is like if to get the blue check mark, you have to verify your identity, it at least increases the amount of accounts who are verified as like people and not just actual like anything, not like just a bot, for instance. And I think that could work to improve discourse. But I don't know. We'll see. I would say I'm optimistic on the future of Twitter, but who knows?
It's good that you're optimistic. You definitely want to look at the glass being half full, but I just don't think, like you said, if it's executed properly, and I don't think it has been. So I can just imagine it going in as a downfall. But I like your optimism, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. It's not often, but this is one of those times. So I think that'll conclude our conversation for today. Thank you for both joining us. And I think that will conclude our Aircast today.